Well, the recent crypto boom has been a huge boon for the NFT space. That news that Visa purchased a CryptoPunk NFT for $150,000.
Well, I sold this picture for $542,000.
I bought this CryptoPunk. This one's my favorite. I just got a bid on it for $632,000, which is insane for a JPEG. 281 ETH, $700,000.
Multiple CryptoPunks were sold for millions of dollars. And
I am feeling like the Thanos of the NFT game. $6 million on my wrist. Baby, CryptoPunk's going to the fucking moon today. To the fucking moon, baby.
Jay-Z's Twitter handle right now is a CryptoPunk. If you talk about like society, brand, culture, what matters, I would argue Hove might be #1. If that's true and his Twitter handle is a fucking CryptoPunk, it's starting to happen.
So big shout out to the CryptoPunks for laying the bricks of the foundation for the walkway on which we stand now on the path to Valhalla.
I'm living in that 21st century, doing something mean to it, buying up these blue chip NFTs, I'm throwing ETH to it. Lava Labs shaped us, punks, yeah, they been booming. All I know is I'm a DJ and here's my theme music. I'm the type that makes the whole scene lose it. I'm the type that take a JPEG, throw a beat to it. Blockchain got me feeling lit, ain't no middleman. Give him this shit that make him go crazy like it's Ritalin. Damn, right, this, get type and it's hype, yeah. Check my height, yeah, I'm out of sight with it lightning. High strike, yeah, grip the mic, yeah. It's frightening when we ride and I make them feel lucid. What? Franken punks, CryptoPunks, yeah, we going to the moon. Ayy, all aboard the ship, cause we going to the moon. Yeah. Fractal punks, CryptoPunks, yeah, we going to the moon.
Twenty 2017 was a crazy bull run. Crypto at the time was cracking into the mainstream. Bitcoin and Ethereum and other loved altcoins were testing new highs, parabolically growing. Eventually, this came to a brutal ending. Many remember the ICO bust and the scams that have now become iconic memes. In the background of all this noise and this mania phase, a legendary NFT collection was born. Larva Labs' CryptoPunks, which till this day remains a relic many don't understand. Why do CryptoPunks have value? Why are people spending insane amounts of money on them? Why does it matter? How is this going to improve the average person's life? My goal with this series is to answer those questions. CryptoPunks were released in the summer of 2017 by two Canadian software developers, Matt Hall and John Watkinson. And though they have an extensive list of creations like their endless driving game, their Android apps, and other interesting inventions, their most popular and successful one ended up being their blockchain art project, CryptoPunks, a 10,000 collection of 24 by 24 pixel avatars on the Ethereum blockchain. There was nothing like this at the time. The founders gave them out for virtually nothing.
So myself and my co-creator John Watkinson had basically a character generator. John had been working on it for a while, and we weren't quite sure what to do with it. And it's sort of ties into everything that we've been discussing today. Just like, you know, what's special about these things? We can make lots of these unique things. They're digital, but you know, in what way could you own them? Or how do you feel like you own them and stuff? And around this time, we discovered Ethereum. It had been going for a little while, but it was new to us. This was all sort of early 2017. And so we generated 10,000 of these characters, put them in a big image, and basically embedded them in a contract, and basically allowed people to own individual ones via this contract. It's now like what we've all been talking about today. We also embedded the basically a marketplace into that as well. So because there was no standard then, so we had to build all the functions to bid and offer and basically transact these things as well. And then we kept the first 1,000 and gave away the next 9,000. You just had to come and pay the transaction fees. And at first, nobody came. It was wonderful. So the value was 0. And then there was a couple like great articles about it that kind of convinced everyone that something was interesting about it. And then we basically went through this thing where they were all claimed within 24 hours. And then the secondary market just happened. It went from free to $1 to 10 to 300 and we started selling them. We were like, oh my God, this is like ping files, and we're selling these things. It was crazy. But then we started buying them because we were like, wait, this is cool. Like, this is new. This is neat. So that was the experience. For us, it was just like something like, does it even work? Does it even make sense? Do people feel like they own these things? Like, in what ways? What's the requirements for people to feel like these things are valuable? So that's almost 2 years ago now.
The project took clear inspiration from the Cyberpunk movement, which features a dystopian sci-fi theme.
In the 90s, a particular kind of aesthetic arose in corporate media, a kind of aesthetic that evoked global unity, a fake cultural diversity, a fetishization of the so-called primitive, and the feeling of returning to nature and innocence. Despite the popularity of the aesthetic at the time, today it is recalled as being charmingly cheesy pastiche at best, and as hypocritical, false, and aesthetically offensive at worst. However, at the same time, starting in the 80s and really kicking in the 90s, there arose a significant cultural phenomenon effectively opposed to all such corporate aesthetics. This phenomenon manifested itself in literature, movies, music, video games, and even theory. I'm talking, of course, about cyberpunk. Initially, cyberpunk arose as a literary genre, before quickly infecting everything else. It was a phenomenon that strongly reflected the conditions it arose in. It was a time when the internet massively expanded, entering public and commercial use, a time when virtual reality started seeming like a real possibility, a time when human bodies were increasingly subject to technological modification, a time when cultural postmodernity took over, and of course, not to mention, a time of neoliberalism, when the increased power of multinational corporations led to the decreased significance of national bounds. Cyberpunk reflected all of these changes. Its authors were painfully aware of the circumstances that gave birth to the genre, a genre that was not afraid to look at the contemporary social condition face to face.
Pretty cool, right? CryptoPunks are the original NFT avatar project. Matt and John created the rarity standard you see in many 10,000 collections today. They were the earliest avatar project, an early inventor of the ERC 721 standard. They basically invented scarcity, as CryptoKitties did not. Great team. The founders were veteran software developers, and they made other cool projects, and they were doxxed. The most impressive list of collectors holding punk NFTs right now, and punks were free to claim. And the marketplace takes 0% in transaction fees. Just how ETH was a first mover in the smart contract space, CryptoPunks were the first movers in the NFT space. Pioneers, baby! But how does this explain the insane sales you've seen the past year, or the $250,000 floor to obtain the cheapest punk on the market? Do these points alone justify the demand? It's a great question. The only way to explain this is to tackle the culture behind the art. It's the reason why Facebook changed their name to Meta. It's the reason why Nike bought an augmented reality shoe company, Artifact. It's the reason why there's 6 billion people now with smartphones. It's because we're living in the immaterial era. Whether you'd like to admit it or not, most things you treasure are immaterial. Take this video you're watching right now. Was this the first video you watched today? How many hours have you spent on a screen this week? What's the new show you started recently? Did you catch that new Drake album on Spotify? Look, I'm not judging you or guilting you for using Spotify, watching Netflix, playing games. I'm just trying to prove my point. We spend a lot of time in the digital world. We value the digital world a lot. And although many scoffed at it in its early inception, the same critics are now its biggest advocates. So, welcome to the immaterial era, the age of experience, the age where art doesn't need to be a rectangular thing that you hang on a wall, or rather a feeling, a sensation, an experience that occurs in your head through one of these or these. So that makes sense, right? We can see that the world has voted through their actions and their behaviors. They value the utility of the digital world. So what comes next? What is the next evolution? Ownership. Let's take a look at Team Fortress 2, a first-person arcade shooter that launched around 2008 when the Windows version launched. It was initially a pay-to-play game, meaning you had to cop the CD to actually play it. But they slowly changed the model to making the game free-to-play and adding a digital store, which is a very popular theme we see today with the likes of League of Legends, Fortnite, you name it. These were the really early days of digital collectibles and owning skins and cool unique items that you can use in-game. Team Fortress 2 featured a massive catalog of collectible items in varying rarities. The most expensive being this hat, which would go for 12 grand. Yes, 12 grand. People would trade this item and they'd pay for this. The utility was the status. It was extremely rare. You'd be constantly noticed across many servers and people would automatically think you're a total badass. Is that what punks are? A super overpriced collectible which will burn to ashes once people realize anyone can just right-click, download it, and own it as well.
You think it's funny to take screenshots of people's NFTs, huh?
No, CryptoPunks are a lot different than the collectibles that we saw in Team Fortress 2. In TF2, you didn't really own anything. At any point, Valve, the company behind the game, could ban your account. Boom, there goes all of your items. All the work that you put in to earn those and collect that, gone in a second, gone in a click. Okay, or the company could shut down. Let's say they retire the game, they want to work on something new, or they go out of business. Boom, there goes your collectibles. You can no longer use them anymore. It was prone to these risks because a centralized entity was running the show. But NFTs have flipped that. That does not exist with CryptoPunks. You actually own your punk, which is verified by the token itself, the NFT, which is stored on the blockchain in your Web3 wallet. If Larva Labs, the creators of CryptoPunks, don't like you, there's literally nothing they can do to prevent you from buying, holding, or trading CryptoPunks. They can't block your account. If they decide to shut down and just say, screw it, we don't want to work on this anymore, CryptoPunks will still exist and function perfectly. That's the power of NFTs. It's a smart contract built on a blockchain, which makes the data immutable and virtually timeless. Okay, so CryptoPunks were first movers. They set the standard for NFTs. They pioneered something amazing and are now a household symbol of owning art on the blockchain. But why in the world are people throwing millions of dollars on these pieces? The simple answer really is just supply and demand. For instance, you've seen these CryptoPunks make a lot of headlines. That pale light blue skin tone. These are alien punks. They're extremely rare. There are only 9 of them out of the 10,000, which means there's an extremely limited supply. So when you have an extremely limited supply, an insanely huge demand, as the project becomes more popular and people are realizing what it is, you're gonna have price action that goes way up. But what you really want to know is why. Right? Why is there such intense demand? Forget about the supply, forget about that. Why is there such intense demand? Well, sit tight, because once I piece this jigsaw puzzle together, everything is going to click. It's going to make sense and blow your mind. To start things off, I'm going to have my boy Mitchell Chan set the context for us. This dude is an absolute NFT wizard, a giant in the space with an impressive track record.
Are NFTs really art? And how on earth does it make sense that people are paying tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars for these things? So I think that there are two ways to look at the core concept of NFTs as a whole. The first way, which is to just look at these as collectible tokens, is easy. And this is going to be probably the first ever art history lecture that opens with a tweet from Mark Cuban, because he explained it pretty darn well in under 256 characters. He said, once you realize that the sense of ownership is the same for a digital collectible as it is for a physical one, you come to the realization that holding, maintaining, grading, shipping, buying, selling a physical good is a hassle. Okay. Now, I think that's a pretty darn concise explanation of the value proposition of NFTs as collectibles, like with Top Shots or trading cards. And if that's enough for you, great, we're done. You can skip the rest of the video. But if you're still here asking, is it art?
Yes, but is it art?
Yes, but is it art?
We're gonna need a little bit more time. So let me paint a picture for you. The year is 1958, and you're in Paris, outside 3 Rue des Beaux-Arts, the site of Galerie Iris Claire. Actually, you're a ways down the block from there because you are in a long lineup to get into the gallery to see the newest exhibition by art world sensation Yves Klein. As you finally get to the gallery, you see that the windows have been blocked out with panels painted in an incredible deep shade of blue. This is Klein's trademark color. The entrance to the gallery is shrouded with a luxurious curtain of the same color. Finally, you've made it to the entrance of the gallery. Congratulations! Before you enter, the artist himself hands you a cocktail to celebrate: gin, Cointreau, and methylene blue. And you can sip on it while you enjoy the exhibition. You enter the gallery teeming with anticipation, ready to see this newest masterpiece by one of the art world's most celebrated sensations, and there's nothing there. Not even the color blue. In fact, prior to the exhibition, Klein meticulously repainted the whole gallery white, just to make sure the space would look as empty as possible. You stand in the empty space for a while, and a while longer. You leave, making room for the next visitor. Outside, some people who have been through the gallery are confused or even angry, but a lot of them are moved nearly to tears. Albert Camus is here. He's in awe. He's written a brief note for Klein. With the void, full powers. Whew. At least with an NFT, you have something to look at. So what's happened here? Has Yves Klein just perpetrated the greatest scam in art history? Is this the art world version of the Emperor's New Clothes? The answer, and I'm comfortable saying this definitively because I think that most people who have studied art history and who are a lot smarter than me would agree, the answer is definitely no. These invisible artworks, which would come to be known as the Zone de Sensibilité Picturale Immatérielle, were the apotheosis, the very purest manifestation of an idea that had been developing in art for decades. The idea that an artwork was an idea or experience that is completely independent of its physical container. It's an understanding of art that is probably worth coming back to in this moment. And these ideas might help us to think intelligently and critically about the emerging NFT space. So to really understand the meaning of Klein's zones, and to understand the meaning of any artwork really, we need to take a closer look at the history of Klein's career up to that point, and the history of the art ideas that he was building on. There are many different intertwining threads of ideas that played out over the first half of the 20th century. Here's a 10-second history of one of those threads. It goes like this. Art used to start with a real thing, and then art would try to copy it. The more the art resembles the real thing, the better it was. Then, art could start with a real thing, but make it look different. The more ingenious your way of making it look different, the better. Finally, final step, art doesn't have to start with a real thing at all. Art is its own thing. It can be a completely original phenomenon in itself. Boom. Just wrote your first modern art history term paper for you. You're welcome. Now, how does this relate to Klein? Yves Klein is probably still best known for his blue monochromes. These paintings are about that last step in the 10-second history that I just gave you. The idea that art could stop representing things and be its own thing unto itself. His monochromes look kind of like some other paintings that were trying to embody the same ideas, like this one. When the Russian supremacist painter Kazimir Malevich painted this in 1915, he's trying to really throw down the gauntlet and say, no, my painting is not an abstraction of a real thing. It does not represent a real thing. It is not an imitation of a real thing. It is simply a black square to be taken on its own terms. And that's probably why he titled the piece Black Square and not Black Bear at Midnight. Klein's monochromes are definitely inspired by this work, but they push this idea forward a bit in both their concept and their technical execution. Conceptually, Klein isn't satisfied with leaving the conversation where Malevich left it by saying, this painting is just a painting. He truly believes that his art is a sensation, a feeling, something that we might call today a state of mindfulness. In other words, his painting is more than a painting. He doesn't even want it to be a painting. So he actually does a couple of very smart things with his craft and his use of painting technology. First of all, he uses his patented blue. And when I say patented, I mean he literally patented this color of blue. So this incredibly deep but flat blue, it obliterates the picture plane. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's so flat and so hypnotic that if you stare at it, it seems to have infinite depth, and you can no longer tell really where the canvas is in front of you. It becomes space. And you think about it, if you've used a glossy paint, you'd see specular highlights, reflections. You're aware of where that reflective surface is. But when the paint is purely matte, it's a huge question. That's what we call obliterating the picture plane in this case. The other sort of technology thing he'd do is he'd mount the monochromes on pegs that pushed it off the wall a few inches. And so that would further mess with your ability to perceive it as a flat painting on the wall. So Klein is desperately trying to get to the point where his art can be just pure sensation. But he has this problem where no matter what he does, it's still a more or less rectangular thing on the wall. It's still an object. And for him, the physical aspect of his artwork is holding him back. And so Klein is way ahead of where some people are in the NFT debate. He's not asking if something without a physical aspect can be art. He's going further, saying that to be art, something needs to have no physical aspect. This idea of an artwork that is more pure idea and less physical material, well, that idea is sometimes called dematerialization. And it's absolutely crucial to point out here that Klein is a true believer in this idea. And none of this works if he doesn't have a long history of exploring these ideas across multiple artworks and exhibitions that he's invested his whole career into. Around the same time that he was preparing for the zones, he was drawing up plans for buildings that would use only pillars of fire and columns of blown air. It's crazy stuff, sure, but there's a tidy story connecting the monochromes to this architecture of air and finally to the zones. So the zones were absolutely the apotheosis of Klein's quest to present an artwork that was pure idea. Because according to Klein, these zones weren't empty. He claimed that they were imbued with the sensibility of the color blue. And so when he presented the zones at a later exhibition, he stood in the gallery and he loudly declared, "First there is nothing, then there is a deep nothing, then a blue depth." In Klein's own words, What he wanted to achieve with these works was, quote, the creation of an ambience, of a real pictorial climate, one that is therefore invisible. He claimed that the sensation of the color blue was there in the room with you, even if you couldn't see it. He claimed that this exhibition would literally impregnate viewers with the color blue. When the visitors to that exhibition came home, they would find that that was true in at least one sense. That cocktail you drank with the Cointreau and the methylene blue, it dyed your pee blue. And because I know that Klein had devoted his life to these ideas of immateriality, I believe him. Klein had created an artwork that contained the sensibility or the idea or produced the sensation of a visual experience without relying on paint, canvas, or any material at all. And of course, he had to bring the entire history of his career to bear to give that idea credibility. But yeah, I believe in it. And a lot of other people did too. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about Yves Klein and his mystical, invisible artworks. But what does this mean for NFTs? Cry the NFT enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Well, first of all, recognizing half-century-old art ideas like this, it goes a long way to legitimizing the claim that, no, an artwork does not need to have a physical aspect. And that's important, because that's the first part of the debate that we talked about in the opening after looking at that Mark Cuban tweet. But I think if you're working in NFT art and you really want to be an artist, it's important to think about artistic value as separate from collectability. And Yves Klein is a really great example of someone who truly believed that an artwork was an idea, that an artwork was an experience, but that an artwork was never a physical thing. Okay, so that's established. But guys, let's talk about the second part of that understanding. Let's talk about the elephant in the room here. Let's talk about the money. Well, you see, this part of the conversation is where Yves Klein goes from run-of-the-mill clever art boy to true genius. If you think these invisible zones of immaterial pictorial sensibility are fascinating, wait till you get to the next part of this video and wait till you hear what these things cost. The relationship between art and materiality was just one of the ideas that Klein was exploring. And as I said before, it's an idea that I think he pushed forward incrementally with some of the techniques that he used. But the other thing that he was exploring was the question of, what does it mean to own an idea? You see, the zones of immaterial pictorial sensibility were for sale. And that meant that someone could own that feeling of the color blue. But to own this most immaterial of artworks, you had to pay in the most material of currencies, pure gold. That's right, you could only buy these invisible artworks for gold. And people did. And so when you handed over your 20 grams of gold for this zone, you did get something physical in return. You got this, a receipt, a token. That acknowledges your legal ownership of the zone. That's it. That's the only physical thing you get. But wait, it doesn't stop there. Once again, Klein takes it further. Just like he took this notion of art as idea and took that further by saying that, the object was actually in conflict with art as an idea, Klein did something to say that owning an idea was actually in conflict with experiencing the idea. Because Klein recognizes, like Mark Cuban did in that tweet, that while physicality or materiality is not strongly linked to a sense of connection with the thing, ownership is really strongly linked to a sense of connection with a thing. That's true whether the thing in question is an esoteric art idea, a sensation, or a rookie card. And Klein wants to push past that. So Klein says, if you want a receipt to say that you now own this idea, you have to pay for it in gold. But he says, you won't really own what he calls the true immaterial value of the artwork. It won't become a part of you the way an artwork that you own is supposed to become a part of you. To have that, you have to participate in this ritual. He says, meet me at the River Seine. Bring the little paper token that I gave you in exchange for that 20 grams of gold. And burn that token. And I'll throw half the gold in the river. And now, and only now, will you truly understand what it means to own that artwork. There are 3 well-documented instances of collectors performing this ritual with Klein. Burning the paper receipt that now would be worth a lot of money if they were to sell it to a museum. Watching Klein throw only half his gold into the river, and sharing this connection with the artwork, which again is supposed to contain the immaterial essence of the color blue. One collector who actually did this described his experience, writing that he had, quote, no other experience in art equal to the depth of feeling. It evoked in me a shock of self-recognition and an explosion of awareness in time and space. It's interesting to me that burning is one of the functions that is by default included in NFT token contracts. And I know that there are some collectors out there who have made big money purchases and then publicly burned the token. I recognize that doing this is typically what we call a flex, a display of that collector's wealth and the breadth of their collection. But if you are someone who has done this, if you've burned a token connected to an artwork that you've bought, please reach out to me because I need to know. How did it feel? Do you feel like you too now own the artwork absolutely and intrinsically the way Klein thought you would? Please get in touch. Okay, so that's a lot about Yves Klein and the zones. And hopefully you've seen how some of these really esoteric conversations that were happening in art around 1960 are really, really relevant right now. And we've seen how Klein's zones were sort of the original tokenized artwork. But just as Klein would use his new technologies, namely his paint and his mounting techniques, to improve on Malevich's ideas of abstraction, so were there artists who would use the new tools of blockchain to improve on Klein's ideas of immateriality. What it represents is, in some ways, complete transparency about what Yves Klein, myself, and others think art is. Because in a lot of ways, an artwork has never been just about the physical thing. Any artwork is a token that connects you to an idea about a long past empire, or an idea about the person who created it, a political idea, or an idea about the nature of art itself. So what does this say about NFT artworks? I don't know. All this history doesn't mean that all NFTs are actually brilliant exercises in conceptual art. No, a lot of them are just as bad and just as shallow as skeptics might say they are. But this history does give us some context that artists can use to push forward and create new ideas. And maybe those ideas will be ones that really are best suited to be expressed through digital transactions. This art history shows us that there is actually a strong foundation to say that NFTs do something that was a natural part of the evolution of art, separating their idea from their physical manifestation. And now maybe we can all move on to judging the ideas that are behind them.
Humans have always had a knack for things that are rare and exclusive, things that improve our status. Even the inhabitants of Egypt collected rare relics and would bury themselves with it when they die. What is the utility of art and gold for a dead person? Well, they did it for class. Ancient Egyptians believed in an afterlife, and wealthy people assembled items for the same luxurious second life that they experienced in the first. They had this intrinsic belief, this intrinsic value that it would matter. And so it did matter. Once there is a consensus, it becomes a reality. And that was the case of ancient Egypt. Treasures buried with the ancient Egyptian kings included valuable things owned during life and new items made to demonstrate high social and political position. It's crazy. The things humans do for status. Take diamonds, for example. Even though they aren't the most rare gemstones, they're one of the most iconic symbols of wealth and status, dating back 600 years. The celebrities that wear them, the advertising you see, even though there's a bit of politics with its economics and how the value's inflated, at the end of the day, it's been hundreds of years this so-called precious gemstone still holds the household name of being a woman's best friend. And celebrities still spend an exorbitant amount of money on diamond jewelry. We will spend money on things that make us feel something. We will spend money on things that give us exclusivity, that elevates our status. NFTs will allow us to have that same flex, that same status, that same feeling in the virtual world, which we're inching closer and closer to day in and day out. But get this, it takes us a level above it where a rare art piece in your home cannot be shown to many people, but a rare art piece on the blockchain that you own can be shown to arguably millions, if not billions.
So as promised, I wanted to show you some experiment we did about NFT. So basically you would be able to edit your profile, click on your avatar and select NFT. From this you would be able to connect to your wallets and choose your preferred wallet. So for the purpose of the experiment, I'm just mocking the backend. So after confirming, you will be able to download all your NFT from OpenSea, select one, and then you will have your NFT as your avatar with the Ethereum check mark, showing that this NFT has been minted on Ethereum blockchain. If you click on collectible as well, you can see the collection of NFT you have.
The perfect example of that is influencer culture. They're just numbers, right? Numbers and pixels, the amount of followers you have, the likes and engagements you're getting. They don't matter, right? Nobody cares. You're wrong. Getting a blue check on Instagram is a pretty big deal now. A mutual friend of mine wanted to pursue a film career, which is pretty hard. Do you ever see a wanted sign in Hollywood? Nah, it's just not gonna happen. So instead, they decided to grow an audience and refine their craft on social media first. After years of blood, sweat, and tears amassing a sizable audience, they finally got their blue check on Instagram, which would open the world to them. Many doors that were closed before began opening. This is the reality, whether you like it or not. The world is becoming more digital. Digital status and flexing is a big deal.
Hey, I heard you was giving your chain away. That's kind of like giving your fame away.
The next phase is true ownership of digital goods and services. The next blue check, the next flashy flex, the next big thing are NFTs. History is on our side. It proves it, and the market is already speaking volumes. But where will this lead us? And are the negatives outweighing the pros? Join me in my NFT investigation, my degenerate pursuit, in part 2. I will answer these questions and more. Till then, make sure you're subscribed, smash the like button if you're excited for the series and enjoyed this video, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on when the second part drops. I'll see you then.
Yeah, check it. NFTs super sexy, man, it always lures me. I'm too focused and you know you'll never ever deter me. Crypto astronaut, DJ moving so hazardous. Crypto what I gon' dabble, OpenSea is like chapel, yeah. Chasing 100X's, my ex, she been getting jealous. The man she's with like a peasant if you comparing me. I had to give you up, girl, for my legacy. I'm so grateful for my 3D Franken family.